Right, as I am going to be doing this, I'm not always going to be sat in front of the camera here. I'm sometimes going to just take my phone and go for a walk in the woods. Now, as much as it would be cool to hold my Canon and record the chat, I'm not going to do that. So sometimes it's going to be a case of me just holding, maybe just like playing the screenshot of the audio file, but there'll be an introduction. There'll be like a little video bit here where it's like, here's another episode of me walking in the woods talking, which brings me to this one, which is me talking about the joys of, similarly, of the cassette and the kind of the homemade demo. Oh, hey, so what have I been doing this morning? Well, today I was finishing an album of kind of like demo type tracks. I wanted to have an artist that is just producing demos. And I mean demos because they sound like they've been recorded on a tape. You know, there's wobble, the high and the lows are all missing, the timing's off, tuning's probably off too, well, definitely off. Because I want this artist to be like the imperfect, the raw, a kind of like a representation of my favourite way of working, which is I just write, don't edit, then move on. Write, then edit. Well, write, don't edit, then move on. And then I listen back to what I've done a few days later and think, these are great ideas. And, you know, I'm not after the polished sound of it all. I'm not after perfect time, perfect tuning. I'm not after like a beautifully massive production. I'm just after rawness and ideas. Kind of in the same way that when I record these, it's just me chatting away to the ether. But that's what I want with this one. You know, I'm not always going to be creating new artists, but at this stage, I'm just letting myself do my thing, basically. And these new artists, at this stage, doesn't have a name, but I kind of like the idea of it being something to do with tapes, but, you know, maybe calling it demo tapes. Hello you. So yeah, calling it demo tapes or something like that, or not forgotten tapes, you know. But yeah, because that's what it kind of is. Or scratch ideas or something like that. Idea tapes. You know, rather than it be like a name, which it could be, I suppose, but it doesn't need to be a name or anything like that. I just want to have something that I can pin to it. But oh, hello. Oh, little puppy keeps saying hello to me. Cute. But yeah, it's exciting. It's nice because I just get to sing along. I don't have to worry about the finished product. I don't have to worry about any of that stuff. I can just focus on the ideas. Just shove on a mastering chain, give it a bit of a listen, and just move on. Because for me, that's the magic. That's where I like it. Yeah, what else? Oh yeah, I've also been doing, I guess you call it piano slowcore, but it's kind of just like, if you've taken the slowcore ideals and put it with a piano, and that's it. You know, really minimal. Again, I'm not worried about timing. I'm not thinking about production. I'm just pressing record, playing, and just letting it rock. If it clips, it clips. If it doesn't, it doesn't. It's just so freeing, you know. It's so great, you know. And I'm not recording, I'm not close micing. I'm kind of just shoving the mic pointing in the right direction. So I was getting the room as well, and I just want that feeling again. Yeah, it's a lot of fun. Again, I don't have a name for that one. I feel like that should be not quite so on the nose with tapes or anything like that. But so I've done 5 of those. I didn't do 5 of those this morning. I did another one, sort of, because they're quite easy to crank out. And that's where my joy is. Just letting an idea go, recording it, and then letting it go. It's so freeing. It's very exciting. And then what else? That's kind of it. To this morning, anyway. Well, I say that's kind of it. I wrote and recorded 2 songs and a piece of this piano slowcore. So 3 tracks in a morning. That's pretty good going, I suppose. And I know what you say. It's not like highly professional. Yeah, I know it's not highly professional. I don't care. I think the thing is, the music I listen to, I don't really care if it's not polish. I'm not listening to it for polish. I'm not listening to it for its mix. I'm not listening to, I'm not writing music that needs to have all that stuff. I'm capturing and writing a mood, and that's great and exciting. Really exciting. It kind of takes me back to when I was 16. 16, yeah. Went to see Weezer in London, and Jimmy Eat World were performing as their support act, and I'd heard of Jimmy Eat World through the pre-emo grapevine, as it were, but I'd never been able to get any access to any of their stuff. This was before we could access everybody's library all over the place. I'd go into Virgin record store and peruse it, and it'd be like Jimmy Eat World would be there, but there'd be no CDs, and I'd be like, no. So nothing was happening, because I think this was just after Clarity, maybe just before. Oh, that was it. It was on there. They were doing Bleed American. Anyway, so I saw them, and I was like, my socks literally flew off my feet. They were blown off, and that, as in you totally blew my socks off. I don't know if that's a worldwide saying or a British saying or not. But yes, I did that, and that was awesome. And as part of their promo, they gave away a free demo, and it was like a praise chorus. It was the single for a praise chorus. And on that was a demo for Do I forget what the name of the song is, damn it. It's how the hustle girls see what the jukebox knows. Anyway, there. It was a demo, and it sounded fantastic. It was it wasn't, obviously their timing was great and their tuning was great, but it sounded raw in comparison to a praise chorus. And later on down the line, when I totally bought into Jimmy Eat World as a band, bought Clarity and their first album, which I wasn't that keen on, to be totally honest with you. But yeah, Clarity and Bleed American, and I absolutely loved Clarity. And it's the same with Weezer's Pinkerton. It's like when the band gets to produce it, it's not like beautifully polished, it's raw and it's edgy, and you just go, yeah. Like when in Pinkerton, Weezer's Pinkerton, when it starts and you hear Tired of Sex, and you go, dude, this is awesome, dun, 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 dun. It's just like, yes, you've taken a nursery rhyme and turned it into a rock song, a rude rock song. It's awesome. And that's where my brain is, really. And it's the same with the Smashing Pumpkins. I'm kind of going back to where I started, which was, I feel inspired by the music I was listening to. I turn on my cassette recorder, press record, and record an idea. And back then, this was what, 2000? Late 90s? Back then, I'd sit there and I'd be like, I really like this, but there's no one else doing this. I'm not saying like I was ahead of the curve, duh. I know everybody who had an 8-track or a cassette recorder was doing exactly the same thing, but it wasn't so embraced. This whole idea of like the cassette culture, the kind of rough, the edgy, the out of tune, the out of time, it wasn't so mainstream. And back then, if it wasn't mainstream, you basically never heard it. But just because of the way the music industry worked, the CD distribution was the only way we ever really got to hear anything. This was before MySpace and stuff, and back then the internet wasn't somewhere you would go to find CDs and stuff. Well, it wasn't for me anyway. So I was sort of sat there and I really loved this tape aesthetic. And in fact, I started playing around with the tape and kind of screaming into it and distorting it and stuff like that, and just seeing what it was and how it sounded. And then my mum bought me a 4-track recorder, an old Fostex thing, which was amazing, but I didn't know how to bounce more than 4 tracks, so I only ever wrote 4 tracks. But that was always fine. Obviously, that introduced me to the idea of timing and how poor my timing was. Still is, but I don't care. And it just had this whole, this whole feeling about it that bedroom recordings, that I didn't know it wasn't really a thing. I guess it was a thing, but it was a thing before the name of the thing. And I loved it. I'd sit there just playing a loop on my guitar, press record, just play the loop, and then stop it, back then on my old cassette player, when I pressed play, it would do that wonderful, it was kind of like almost warp out of tune back into tune again as you press play. And it was always just like, this is awesome, love this. And then obviously I got into being a professional composer, and then everything focuses on clarity, quantizing, sounding epic and real and high quality and professional. And as I kind of progressed through that, I returned back to this home recorded sound with my dark horror stuff for trailers. I would just record these ideas with a podcasting microphone because I couldn't be bothered to plug in my Rode NT1A, and the podcasting mic obviously has a certain colour to it, it doesn't sound as good. And anyway, I didn't care. I was just recording these ideas. I'd record them, it was badly timed, badly tuned, and admittedly the only difference was they would then be mixed and mastered professionally, so the production would then step up a notch into the world of trailers, but the aesthetic was there. And I loved that stuff, and I don't think it's any coincidence that stuff was my most successful trailer output. It was all it was a series of albums called Throat. There was Throat 1 through to 6, and I did solo albums 2, 3, 4, 5 and 6. That was all me on my own. Throat 1 was me and a few other composers. But so I did these Throat album, and I loved it. I just loved this kind of like scratchy, out of tune, but you're capturing an emotion, and obviously it worked perfectly for horrors and thrillers and stuff. And I'm not saying that the songs I'm writing now are horrors and thrillers. What I'm saying is it's the same aesthetic. It's this wonderful world of wonky and weird, but also comforting and homely. As much as I have always aspired to be one of those producers who could make a beat feel like it was going to bust your gut, or make a guitar sound exactly like Siamese Dream or Green Day's first album. What's it called? Ducky? Yeah. Oh, ashamed I can't remember that. It was kind of like trying to squeeze myself into a box that I wasn't. And I think now that I'm in my 40s, gasp, it's like, I feel like I can finally embrace this. And I'm being inspired by this new generation of producers and composers and songwriters who are just putting out the most raw and wonderful stuff. I mean, it is like the original lo-fi of the 50s, where people were just grabbing whatever gear they could afford, or whatever gear that was to hand, and recording. And it's the same now. It's like we've got all of this amazing ability to capture and record and produce music. And sometimes we forget that we're communicating a feeling. And the feeling doesn't need to be polished. And I think it kind of speaks volumes about these artists like Sign Crush's Motorist or Other Nothing, these composers and producers and songwriters whose tracks have gone viral, but then you listen to them and you go, well, that's clipping. They've just plugged the guitar straight into the computer. You know, all these. The producer in you goes, oh, hold on, they've broken all these rules. And you go, well, screw the rules. You want to have this like wonderful, warm, rich feeling of emotion. And sometimes you get that with a poor recording. And sometimes you get that with a bad performance. I always remember this interview with Butch Vig, back to the Smashing Pumpkins, when he produced Siamese Dream. Pumpkins did this sort of old VHS documentary of their live shows and albums. And Butch Vig in the video was just like, hey, you know what, man? I'm not going to put the American accent on, but I really want to. Hey, you know what, man? No, you know what? I'm not getting Billy to sing perfectly in tune. We're keeping the takes that feel the most raw and emotive. I mean, I'm paraphrasing, but you get the point. And, you know, you listen back to Beach Boys' sort of stems of their vocals, and you just think, wow, these are fantastic, and these are raw, and these are lovely. And, okay, I say raw. They were obviously highly produced for the day. But at the same time, because it was live performance and there weren't so many sort of dubs and stuff, timing and tuning isn't 100%, it's human. And when I say, just so you know, when I say 100% and in timing, 100% in tune, no one ever sings or performs 100% in time or in tune. I would say it's near impossible. But if it is possible, it makes that performer sound machine-like. You know, we've done recordings with the best musicians in the world, and we've sat there quantizing their timing or deleting a take where they're out of tune. You know, it's like, you go, wait, we spent like 20 grand on this recording and we're still having to fix the timing. And you go, well, okay, so maybe it's not. I know it is important for this style of music because it's kind of what everyone is. I'm talking about trailers here. It's kind of what everyone expected, but here, in this world of just producing music for the mood, for the feeling, does it matter? And I know I'm speaking to a certain few of you who are going, well, yes, Richard, it does matter. A better take with better timing sounds better. But admittedly, that is down to our ears training. Our ears have learnt to hear things and learnt to feel them in certain ways. You know, we'll hear things in, you know, the 12 pitches of the Western scale, whereas there are so many nuances in between. And I'm not saying when I play badly, I am actually playing in a wonderfully unheard of mode that has 468 micro pitches within it, although I probably am, but not on purpose. But what I love about this stuff, this piano stuff I was doing this morning and the kind of cassette tape recording songs I was doing, was it's just like, I'm just making music. And I'm making music to kind of communicate and capture an emotion. And if I capture the sound of the room, or if I capture the squeak of my frets, or if I capture a vocal take that starts a bit late or whatever, then that's great. If it gets the vibe across, perfect. And there are tricks I'm using to kind of hide my poor performances and poor recordings, like putting it through tape emulation, which obviously cuts the very lows, cuts the very highs, gives it a bit of wobble, which immediately makes it sound slightly out of tune anyway. But I love it. It reminds me of being a teenager, recording my songs on my old cassette player. And that makes me feel happy. And I hope that you get the point of this, that I'm communicating feeling over and above the fine details within the production and the performance. Yes, they are intertwined. I get it. And the tape aesthetic for me is more just a nostalgic thing. But it makes me happy. And it's awesome. And I think it vibes with lots of other people too, given how many people listen to this type of music. I say this type of music, I'm basically talking about alternative, alt indie, alt pop, ambient, slowcore, all these other things, post rock, post classical, all these other sort of sub niches within niches where people are like, I like the main thing, but I like it a little bit more when it's a bit off the beaten track. And that's where we're going. Yeah.